पाकिस्तान में हर एक को शौक है रियल एस्टेट खरीदने का. Dubai is a favorite market for Pakistanis as well. Everybody aspires to have something here. So give us some feedback. What is the state of Dubai real estate?
The more the world gets screwed, the more benefit for Dubai. Around 2018, 2019, when Imran Khan was in power, etc., the Nia Pakistan born, the Russian account came, etc., and so forth. There's a lot of positive momentum. A lot of people start selling stuff over here and moving money back to Pakistan. But that money has come back and multiple of that back over here because of just challenges. If you believe in the demand story of Dubai, of population doubling over the next 10, 20, or whatever you call it,
The
we
2040.
don't have enough supply. We just don't, right? So yes, things are going to get more expensive.
Why real estate though? I mean, was it something that you had prior expertise in, that you wanted to crack, you wanted to make something new out of it, or was it something that you thought was definitely the right place to start with?
My real estate journey started when I was in university at a very early age. All I did was call my mom. Mom, I'm thinking of buying a house. I don't need any money from you. You don't need to worry about it. Everything's going to be on mine. So just FYI, she said, go ahead. Young kids were raising $2-3 million on a PowerPoint without having anything tangible. And here we are raising 650 a few years ago thinking, wow, a game changer. Before you raise a single dime, before you do anything, make sure you have someone you can reach out to that has done it before, either successfully or unsuccessfully, and someone that has a zero vested interest in your success. You need that unbiased sounding board.
Yeah.
Without that, don't do anything.
Assalamu alaikum Nazreen Usameen. Welcome to Pace Podcast by Hub 47. This is your host Ali Akram. यहाँ हम आपको आपके मेंटर से कनेक्ट करते हैं, पाकिस्तानी अचीवर से कनेक्ट करते हैं जिन्होंने अपनी लाइफ में कुछ अचीव किया, कुछ लर्निंग्स हैं उनके पास आपके साथ शेयर करने के लिए. आज के हमारे गेस्ट हैं सिद्दीक फरीद साहब. He is the founder of SmartCrowd and he shares a lot of valuable insights and failures with you जिससे आप सीख सकते हैं और अपनी इंस्पिरेशन स्टोरी वो आपके साथ शेयर करेंगे. Do comment your feedback and hope you enjoy the session. Siddiq, welcome to Hub 47. Welcome to Pace Podcast. How are you? Kaise aap?
Walaikum salam. I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me. Quite excited to be part of this initiative and to contribute.
Thank you so much for taking your time and coming over and hopefully sharing some insights, some views from your personal experience, from your life story. We hope to extract valuable information and hopefully some tips.
Very humbled that you feel like I can offer something, but yeah, mostly lessons learned from the mistakes that I've made to benefit others, inshallah.
Mashallah, you've achieved some amazing things, I think, in life already. You've been involved with a very interesting startup. Tell us more about who you are, what you do, what you've done, and then we'll dig deeper.
That's a very loaded question. Yeah, so just a brief background about myself. Ethnically from Pakistan, born in Saudi Arabia, grew up in Canada, been back in this region since 2011, spent 3 years in Doha, and then since 2014 I've been in UAE. Initial stint in Dubai, Abu Dhabi for 3 years, and back in Dubai now. Background, corporate finance professional for many years, and then ventured on my own about 6 years ago to become a job creator instead of a job seeker. We'll talk more about that in terms of what was the motivation behind that.
Nice.
But that's sort of been my journey. Still on that path of making an impact. But alhamdulillah, certain things have gone my way, certain things haven't. But that's part of the parcel. And what's important is the lessons you take along the way. Because it's not the destination that matters, the journey that matters.
The journey, absolutely. Well, I think you said some very interesting. The first thing that I'd like to focus on is, usually कोई entrepreneur होता है, either they start off as think that I'm not going to do a job, I want to do this, I'm very focused on creating something new, But you took an alternative path that gives me hope personally for myself. Maybe I can do this someday as well. You went into professional life, you rose to, as I understand, a high position as well, and then you decided now is the time I need to do something for yourself.
Yeah, listen, it's an interesting, right? There's no I would say a blueprint for this. Everyone has a different journey. You have to go through certain experiences to really make a difference and make an impact. You know, for some people, entrepreneurship right out of an early age works. For certain people, it's sort of later in the profession. But if you look at statistically, data points, the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that typically that start after the age of 40, that are seasoned professionals. And there's merit to that. You know, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world are a lot few.
Yes.
Right? But nothing wrong with that. So my view, you know, when people come to me for advice, etc., and so forth, especially for young people, I highly encourage them to focus on getting some relevant experiences. You know, you have a tool belt and you want to put as many tools as possible within your tool belt, because once you become an entrepreneur and you work for yourself, you have to wear different hats. And the more you can do that without relying on other people, the better equipped you are to handle and be more resilient. So, and that only comes with experience.
Yeah.
Unless you're someone who can, you know, effectively learn on the job, etc. But I think experiences teaches you something that I think education doesn't, which is commercial acumen, connecting the dots. And I think there are certain professions that really give you that arsenal. So, you know, this is probably a biased view because I come from a very trained background from a Big Four accounting firm. So I think that's one of the best training grounds for any young professional, because you get to do a variety of different things. It could be that, it could be sort of investment banking or sort of the big consulting firms. Because you work with a lot of different clients, different industries, etc.
You see a lot.
You see a lot.
You see a lot.
And you develop that commercial acumen. You develop a lot of soft skills along the way as well too, but definitely a lot of hard skills, technical skills, etc. That can pave and give you a really good solid foundation to embark your own journey. It just increases your chances of success, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that's the only way to do this. There are many other ways. You have a lot of success stories of people that have gone, you know, not even going to education, etc., and going straight into entrepreneurship and so forth.
I think that's romanticized a lot more than the regular story.
No, it does, right? And, you know, but with those success stories, there's many failure stories that, you know, we don't see, don't hear about, etc. So it does get overly glamorized, and I think it can lay people on the wrong path, so to speak. And the reason why I say this also is, if you have that proper training and so forth, you always have a fallback, right? Because there's no guarantee that entrepreneurship will be successful, right? So if it doesn't work out, you need to have plan B, plan C. And if you have that experience, that background, etc., you can always, you know, land up your feet somewhere else, rebuild your coffers, and then sort of take another stab at it, etc.
Sure.
Right? Unless, you know, you're fortunate enough to have unlimited financial resources and you keep at it, that's great.
But tell me this: was entrepreneurship an option from you from the start, or was it something that you thought of later in your career?
Yes, it's an interesting story, right? So I don't think there's like a aha moment, so to speak, right? I don't want to make this, don't want to disappoint your viewers over here, right? But, you know, my ethnicity background is Maiman, right? Maimans are typically known for commerce, right? But then there's two kinds of Maimans, right? Ones that are very sort of commerce driven, and then there are Maimans that are sort of very sort of, you know, hardcore bankers and job doers, etc., and so forth. So on my dad's side, you know, come from so he's a Batwa Maiman for people that are, you know, sort of, I'm going a little too much detail over there, but he's a banker, my father-in-law banker, Batwa Maiman as well too, and these guys are notoriously, you know, hard workers, professionals, etc. On my mom's side, they're all tradesmen.
I see.
My grandfather on my mom's side, established a very big business in Bangladesh and Dhaka before the 70s, and then they migrated to Karachi, and then he rebuilt, and alhamdulillah, very successful, multiple businesses and so forth. So, and my mom has that in her as well too, right? So when we first migrated to Canada in the 90s, my dad stayed back in Saudi working, and my mom started 3 businesses and sold 3 businesses in Canada on her own. And she's not even a high school graduate. So I think the inspiration always came from my mother from that perspective. So I always had it in me at some point in time that I want to work for myself. And, there were many ideas along my career path, only to be shared with my wife and to see other people actually turn them into businesses. That at some point in time in my life, I decided it's now or never, right? I'm not getting any younger. And, there was a point in time where I was contemplating potentially going back to Canada.
Right.
And I decided, well, before I do that, let me try something of my own. And 6 years later, I think this has become home, and I can't think of any other place to live. So, everything happens for a reason, and I'm sure there was some barakah in the path that I chose. And that's sort of what sort of inspired me to sort of take that. It wasn't easy. It took a long time to sort of build up that courage to take that leap of faith. Would I do it again? Probably. Would I do it differently? Probably, definitely, right? Because you learn from your experiences and so forth. But yeah, alhamdulillah, it's been quite the roller coaster.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being so candid and sharing that story. So you did mention, and this is something that I'm seeing as a theme coming out, this innate ambition or motivation of becoming a job creator rather than a job taker. What role did that play? What was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so by profession, by training, I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a CFA charter holder. Numbers guy.
Yeah.
Right. Very commoditized industry. Right. And with the invention of AI and so forth, a lot of the work that unfortunately people like you and I do from a numbers perspective, it's only a matter of time where machines can do most of the work.
Yes.
Leaving only 10-20% of analytical work that we might need to apply, right? Intuition, etc., and so forth, which is very difficult for AI at this stage, at least for now.
Yeah.
So, just being ahead of the trend, it's like I don't want to be dependent on earning at the mercy of others, etc., my employer and so forth. Even though I was on a path on partnership, etc., at a firm and so forth, but just, is that really the lifestyle you want and so forth? And that was sort of the underlying motivation in doing so. But then in terms of the kind of business I set up, etc., and so forth, there was a lot of other mission-driven motivation behind as well too. Being a financial person, I have a passion around financial literacy.
Yeah.
I really enjoy sort of supporting, helping people generally, not necessarily when it comes to finances and so forth, but generally speaking. And I noticed, a lot of people have aspirations for wealth, etc., but don't necessarily know how and where to invest, etc., and so forth. So that was also part of the motivation in sort of finding, the wealth tech platform that I did, is to encourage people, one, to save and invest and do it in a sort of a ethical manner. And so the combination of those things really sort of drove the idea, and being here in Dubai where people have, generally speaking, higher disposable income, multiple options. I see a lack of options, hence falling prey to a lot of
Bad schemes,
scams, etc. Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I think there was a need in the market that had to be filled, and that sort of inspired me that now is better than ever. Sort of jump ship and try something.
Right. I think financial inclusion, making more people have the ability to put their money in the right places is definitely an important aspect of all of this. Why real estate though? I mean, was it something that you had prior expertise in, that you wanted to crack, you wanted to make something new out of it, or was it something that you thought was definitely the right place to start with
Yeah.
when it comes to this story?
Yeah, so good question, right? So I would say it's a passion, real estate. My real estate journey started very early in life.
I see.
It's important to give you that context as to where the ideas came from, etc. Prior to that, I didn't have any professional training in real estate investment and so forth. But then again, being a finance person, etc., it's very intuitive.
Yes.
But my real estate journey started when I was in university, at a very early age. We migrated to Toronto. I left Toronto. I went to Ottawa for school on my own. And until then, I was a very introvert person, right? Like the kind of person you see me talking, etc. That wasn't me. I was a very shy person, a very introvert, etc. And then I remember distinctly the day my mom drove me in a U-Haul truck and set me up in residence on campus, and then she left. And then something went off in my brain, and then I just became this very extrovert person, very social. Best 4 years of my life were university. I was like sort of, I won't say a party animal, etc. and so forth, but a very social person. I was a president for the faculty in my third year, etc. and so forth. And I owe my school a lot for my development. Particularly a few professors, my dean particularly, etc. and so forth. I learned a lot more outside the classroom than in the classroom.
Right.
And part of that was, my initial journey around real estate investing, where it was my second year. I remember I used to live off campus in my second year, and I was renting a small studio. It was very nice. Actually, it was a very large studio. And then my mom, at that point in time, she had sold her second business and she had some cash. And I was like, Mom, listen, I'm paying all this rent. You have some cash. Why don't you give me some of that money? I'll go buy a property. And instead of paying rent, I will pay a mortgage.
Mortgage, oh.
Right? And we'll talk about that as to why that's right or wrong, et cetera, and so forth, right? And my mom was like, sure, yeah, makes sense. Why not? So I'm like, great. That wasn't easy, convincing to do. And then I was like, Mom, why don't you give me more money? So I'll buy a 2-bedroom instead of a 1-bedroom. I'll rent the other bedroom out and help pay for the mortgage. It's like, yeah, sure. Okay. Then I was like, why don't we get parking spot as well too? In Canada, you have to buy parking spots separately. Yes. Like, hey, I'll rent that out as well too. So my mom's like, okay, fine, great. And I bought this beautiful condo in downtown, etc. There was, mischievous motivation there as well too. A young kid in university with a very nice apartment, etc. Not that we did anything bad in there, but it was nice, and it was like just down the street from the campus and so forth. So alhamdulillah, that was my sort of first foray into it. And then I remember walking from campus home one day, and I saw an open house sign, just a block on the main road. On this side is a campus, on this side, block of houses, townhomes, etc. And this is Ottawa. It's a Sandy Hill area, very old homes built in the 1800s, etc. and so forth. Very prominent community. And I saw open house, and I walked into it. And I looked around, I was like, wow, right? Like, this is right across the campus. I looked at the numbers, I was a business student, et cetera, right? So numbers were very easy for me. I'm like, the math, like, wow, hold on. I can rent each room for this much. This is what's costing me. I was like, this is interesting. And I went straight home. I opened up my laptop and I started doing research. MLS, which is the multi-listing site where all the things, and I just started looking at some stuff, and I was like, wow, okay, great. This makes a lot of sense. And I started calling the listings directly. I had no prior experience of buying a home, etc. and so forth. And I remember in my first year in residence, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but there was this very beautiful girl, Noreen. She's a good friend of mine, etc. But Bangladeshi heritage, very gorgeous woman. We obviously became friends. She had told me her father was a real estate agent. So I called her. I was like, Noreen, I need to speak to your dad. She freaked out. Why? I was like, no, don't worry. I'm interested in real estate, not in your hand in marriage, don't worry. I need to speak to him about some real estate that I'm thinking of purchasing and so forth. So he helped a lot. initially and so forth. And then, that this was early 2000, the market was just picking up, interest rates were very cheap, et cetera, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was, alhamdulillah, for good or for bad, it was an experience. I was able to refinance my condo, take some equity out, et cetera, and buy this property. All I did was call my mom. Mom, I'm thinking of buying a house. I don't need any money from you. You don't need to worry about it. Everything's going to be on mine. So just FYI. She said, go ahead, do what you think is right. And my mom, alhamdulillah, been very, very supportive from day one, with all our, my siblings, et cetera, and so forth, very trustworthy and letting us make our own calls, et cetera, and so forth. So that was sort of the initial start in my real estate investment journey, and that passion always stayed, et cetera. When I moved to the region, I sold those properties, et cetera. They were all financed. There was no barakah in it, but it was a great learning experience, right? And since then, I've been sort of very anti financing properties, et cetera, and so forth. And that's one of the reasons I founded SmartCrowd, is to give people ability to invest in a very ethical manner without necessarily taking on leverage and so forth. Because at that point in time, when I started SmartCrowd, I was looking to invest in real estate. And this was around Brexit time, looking to invest in the UK, thinking Brexit will happen, there'll be good opportunities in the UK and so forth. But I really struggled to find anything that I could afford without taking leverage or having a lot of concentration risk, meaning putting a lot of my capital into one particular asset. And as a finance person, that it makes sense from a portfolio construction perspective.
Yes.
And then also, then I sort of went to my father-in-law, my parents, and listen, hey, how about we pool our capital and buy something? And they were like, we don't know anything about the UK market, et cetera, not interested and so forth. So that's where the idea percolated, hey, there's probably a lot of people similar boat to me that have decent earnings, but don't have sufficient capital to buy assets. And there are probably some like-minded people that can come together and invest in income-generating assets and so forth. That's where the idea came about, fractionalizing, enabling micro-investments. And that was the initial sort of seed that was planted that eventually became SmartCrowd. It went through a lot of iterations. The idea started in 2016. Pen to paper came over one weekend in October in 2017. I wrote a very detailed business plan, about 35 pages, on one weekend.
Wow.
And in February, February 2018, January 2018 initially, the company was incorporated. So that's sort of the journey. I went through a bunch of iterations into that. But I'll stop over there. I've probably gone into too long of a monologue over here.
No, I think it's excellent because it's great perspective on a lot of things. Your affinity to the asset class, its potential as well. I think in real estate, there's always these opportunities that if you look closely and you understand the numbers and you understand the various factors at play, you can really work the system to create wealth, secure wealth, and also have good income stream set up as well.
100%.
For a lot of things. But the model, I feel, was always there in an informal way, right? हर एक की कोई ना कोई प्रॉपर्टी होती है जो भाई भाइयों ने मिलके ली है,
100%, yes.
इधर लिया है उधर लिया है. But obviously that's not a scalable model because I can't trust you with my money. I can't put a property in your name. You can't do that with me as well. So I think to crack that and generate customer confidence, create and again, you were a pioneer in this industry to be able to do that. What was that like? I mean, what did you feel? How did you identify what needs to be done for this to work? How will you convince people? How will you convince the regulators? But you had to do as well.
Yeah. So I think that the advantage I had is coming from a finance background. I understood the importance of the question that you're asking, right? So for me, it was very clear on day one that this has to be a regulated product to give people comfort because we're effectively asking people to invest their hard-earned capital.
Yes.
Right. So you need to give them that peace of mind that whatever they're doing it in a manner where they can sleep at night comfortably, right? And the whole idea concept, I think even till today, people are not very comfortable, investing in real estate online, right? Digitally, etc. It's a very tangible asset. It's a very emotional decisions for many. The people still don't view it as an investable asset class. They still view it as a roof over their head. And we can talk about that a little bit later when we talk about real estate and portfolio investments and so forth. So that was very clear from day one that it had to be done that way, right? But there's a lot of learnings in that approach as well too, whether I do it the same way or not. We can talk about that as well too, because building a regulated business, and particularly that's focused on retail, is a very challenging proposition.
Yes.
Because regulators inherently are very risk averse.
Yes.
But so that was very clear, and when I wrote that business plan, it was with that intention, with that in mind. And the first thing I did with that business plan, I actually went and shared it with a friend of mine who is in the compliance field. He's a compliance consultant. He helps companies establish in the DIFC and so forth. And I shared it with him, like, hey, can you review this and give me your feedback? And he came back in a week. He was like, Siddiq, I have not seen anything this detailed, even in the companies that are currently regulated and so forth. He goes, this is ready to go to the regulators as is.
No.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's not what I was expecting, but that's phenomenal. And I think that advantage that I had, that mindset, effectively I built it for myself, right, to solve a personal need. So I think that gave me a lot of advantage, and I think that showed with the various stakeholders that I interacted with to convince them. The very next thing I did was I had a friend who is a macro research guy.
Right.
And I paid him. That was my first expense, an official expense for SmartCrowd. It was like, can you write me a socioeconomic benefit paper on this model?
Right.
Like, what are the socioeconomic benefit of creating a model like this on just the general population, right? And there were like 7 benefits. I gave him all the talking points, etc. But I wanted someone independent, third party to do that, as a way to use it to convince, relevant authorities, etc. and so forth. I still have that paper. I don't think it was necessarily used. I don't think a lot of people read it, but I still believe in those benefits today. And I think that's how the journey started, but it wasn't easy, right? Because there was no regulatory framework. There was no legal framework. There had people that had tried in the past and failed miserably. But on my research, when I was trying to validate this idea, I had a bittersweet moment where I found out that, hey, hold on, I'm not the first clever person to come up with this idea, which was kind of sad. But then on the same time, it was sweet in the sense that, hey, someone has already tried this and has worked really well, mainly in the US. It's like, okay, this works, right?
Yeah.
Someone has done it and it works. I'm like, okay. And then obviously, given the nature of the sector, the region that we are in, the cultural background of investing in hard assets, the preference of investing in hard assets, so forth, it made a lot of sense that, hey, there's a need in the market.
Yeah.
There's a gap that needs to be filled because the people that have money are already investing in real estate, but there's a whole plethora of people locally and abroad that would love to, but don't have the capital to do so. And on that sort of confidence, I started knocking on doors and speaking with various different stakeholders, the Dubai Land Department, the DIFC, the DFSA, which is the regulator, ADGM at that point as well too, which is the Abu Dhabi regulator, and so forth. And that's how the journey started. It took a long time. It took us nearly 2 years.
Wow.
To convince them and to give us a license. There was a period in time where we almost felt like it's not going to happen because, in this market we have multiple regulators. Until recently, we had 4 financial regulators. You have the DFSA, you have FSRA and ADGM, you have ESCA, and you have Central Bank. And now we have VARA from a digital assets perspective. So at my time, there were 4 regulators. So there was a lot of intricacies there, etc.
Whose domain, right?
Right, whose domain, etc. There was a point where we were going to the sandbox, and DFSA and central bank stepped in, almost making us almost of the view that this might not happen, etc. And I had taken third-party capital at that point in time, and that was a very stressful period. But perseverance, and we'll talk about some of the key characteristics of entrepreneurship later on. But that's one of the key characteristics that sort of the formation of SmartCrowd. But it wasn't easy. It was a lot of stressful nights, days, months.
I think we could talk a little bit more about the various the roller coaster that it is, right? Going through that journey. I think uh, you had that phase initially that will it happen, will it not happen, and then it did happen, right? It did. You did get the license. That must have felt good, right, at the end of the at the end of that period to be able to do that. Although the journey just started, but it was a major milestone.
It's an emotional roller coaster, right? There's days you want to be on the top of Burj Khalifa and pounding your chest, and there's days you want to dig a hole and bury your head in it and never come out. It is. It's a very emotional journey, and if you are blessed to be married, have family, etc., it's very important to take your partner in confidence and so forth because there's a lot of sacrifices that need to be made. I remember till this date, when we did our first transaction. It was on a sandbox, it was a testing transaction, July 1st, 2018. And when we went to the trustee office and got the title deed of that first transaction, I went downstairs in the car and I literally cried. Right, my wife was in the car. She had driven me there to the trustee office, and I bawled for like good 15 minutes.
Wow.
And it was, I'm getting emotional right now because it was pure tears of joy of doing something that had never been done before.
Yes.
Right, it was the first. No one could take that away.
Yes.
Right, regardless of what it is, and it's success in itself.
Absolutely.
Right, because it paved the way for many others to do what we are doing. And it was, at that point in time, all the sacrifices, all the pain, for that moment felt like, oh man, it was worth it.
Yeah, because again, it was in many senses ahead of its time. I mean,
Way too early.
This is and
Way
we,
too
we
early.
probably have stories to share. This is before Bitcoin, before blockchain, before Robinhood. Yeah.
At least for the region, yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
This is before forget fintech. Right. Even startup wasn't really big.
Yeah.
To give you some context, we were the first applicant for any regulatory sandbox in the region. Period.
Amazing.
Right. We
Wow.
had to sign a paper with the DFSA saying we're guinea pigs for them. Right. We were the first applicant of any sandbox, so we have first of many. Right, including many different accolades that we have. First of all, and I'm not saying that to gloat ourselves. It's just that's the I guess the advantages of being the first. Right, you get credibility, you get a seat at the table.
Yes.
You build really good strong relationships, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have a massive first mover advantage because the thing is, like I said, it took us 2 years.
There's a
To
cost,
do this, right?
yeah.
There's a cost of money, there's a cost of time, etc.
Yeah.
For the next person to come in, it's a fraction of that time.
Yeah.
So they can get to the destination a lot quicker, a lot faster, a lot cheaper. So you've done all the hard work, paved the way for other people to follow. So first mover advantage is not necessarily, in a situation like this, I would say necessarily advantage. There's pros and cons to that, and we can go into more details if you want. But nonetheless, right? But that is something no one can take that away from
No,
you.
and you can definitely carry that all your life. It has an impact. It has had an impact. I mean, I look at the DIFC. It used to be till Gate Village, and you have extended it for another half kilometer.
Yeah, the Gate Avenue Innovation Hub. We were the first ones, like I said. And alhamdulillah, we have phenomenal relationship with the leadership in the DIFC and so forth. And that's one of the of blessings of being in this country. And I tell people, right, like if you want to be an entrepreneur, I can't think of a better place to start your journey because, this place, alhamdulillah, we're blessed with phenomenal leadership, first of all, right? And everything is driven from the top. And then the accessibility that you have to the key decision makers. And if they see that you're adding true value to the country, to the people, they are extremely supportive. It might take long. It might not be a straight path. It might be hurdles. But if you're committed enough, you will get a lot of support and you will get your way.
I think that's an important feedback for a lot of our listeners who are on the verge, who are entrepreneurs already in Pakistan, but they're thinking, वो सोच रहे हैं कि करें ना करें क्या करना है. I think a major hurdle anyways for them is कि a lot of time gets wasted in the setup phase, and I say wasted because yes, usually what happens is, and we've seen that is the initial decision is wrong, and then you have to kind of go back, rework, waste a year of your time and money and effort. That's something we're trying to solve at Hub 47 as well, to have to provide them access to the information that they need to make sure that that first decision is correct. Um, so tell me about how it was going through the fundraising part of things. You already mentioned that you went into Sandbox having already raised capital, so there was a pressure associated with that. But was it easy getting that first check in? Again, new concept on paper only. I'm sure you had hundreds of conversations around it, and then you had that initial success.
Yeah, so one of the right. I'm smiling and laughing because fundraising is tough.
Yeah.
Right. It's not easy, and that shouldn't be your goal. Right. A lot of people term success with fundraising, but it shouldn't be. Right. That's just part of it. There's a lot of people that have come after us, raised a lot of capital, and nowhere to be seen around. So fundraising shouldn't be your success factor. Importantly, but from our journey, right, we're talking about 2018.
Yes.
This is very early.
And it was a downturn. It was a low cycle.
So the whole VC startup scene had not really picked up over here at that point in time.
Yes.
There were a handful of people, very early stage guys like the Souks of the world, Fadi Gandour and these guys, the
Yes.
initial gang of that came out of Aramax, very small scale, right? There wasn't what it is today, what you see, et cetera, and so forth. So, but there were VCs that were starting up, et cetera, and so forth. But we were also early, so a lot of the VCs were also startups, just like us. But that first initial fundraising, a lot of that was family and friends, with a few institutions, and alhamdulillah, to be honest, it didn't require a lot of convincing at that time, at that point in time, because we were very early, one of the very few sound business ideas that were in a very professional setting, such as being part of a sandbox, etc., and so forth. There's a couple of stories around that. The DFC set up a fintech hive, which is an accelerator program, etc., and how we got into that. That sort of gave us a lot of credibility as well. So, but we have a lot of different nuances in terms of how the fundraising came. But I remember, our initial lead investor was Abu Dhabi-based VC called Shuruk Partners, one of the most active VCs now. They had actually invested in another startup that was also part of the Fintech Hive Accelerator. They were the second applicant in the sandbox, Sarwa, which is a robo-advisory. And Shuruk had invested in them. And I remember having the conversation with the founding partner, Shane, at the first Fintech Hive Investor Day. We had initial, it wasn't an investment discussion, it was just like, that's the first time I met him. And I remember meeting him again for a coffee at Cafe Nero outside of World Trade Center. The second meeting was with him and his partner Mahmoud in Fintech Hive, with the three co-founders at that point in time. And then a week later, they had a term sheet ready for us. And then that sort of led the terms. And then thereafter, we sort of brought in some family, friends, etc. There was an institutional investor out of US as well too, which is initially a funny story. If you have time, you can go into that because that will relate to in terms of what I'm doing now.
All right.
And then the other institutional investor in that was 500 startups that came later in the day. Our goal was to raise 500,000. We were oversubscribed. We ended up raising 650. And I thought at that point in time, we thought, we're top of the world. We're going to change the world. And then the reality came of building a regulatory business and the time it would take, et cetera. And then making 650 last 2 years in one of the most expensive jurisdictions in the world to build a startup wasn't easy.
Yeah.
It was quite challenging. And then the reality is then the whole startup scene blew up. And young kids were raising $2-3 million on a PowerPoint without having anything tangible. And here we are raising 650 a few years ago, thinking, "Wow, what a game changer!" So timing matters a lot.
Yes.
In your success, and for good or for worse, we were way too early in almost everything that we did. Way too early, way ahead of his time, etc. And that has implications. And being the first time entrepreneur, etc. That's why I really advocate people to have really strong mentors.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was too confident, thinking, I'm a CA, I'm a CFA, I know all these things, right? I've read a bunch of books. I can figure this out. I'm a smart guy. And for many things, yes. But for these kinds of things, experiences matter. Having people that have been there, done it, know what mistakes not to make, etc., and so forth, or how to recover from them, etc., is invaluable. So if you are starting your entrepreneurial journey, before you raise a single dime, before you do anything, make sure you have someone you can reach out to that has done it before, either successfully or unsuccessfully, and someone that has a zero vested interest in your success. You need that unbiased sounding board.
Yeah.
Without that, don't do anything.
I think that's a great point there, and we had that ambition at Hub 47 as well to make sure that one of the main things that anybody gets out of us is access to good mentors. And inshallah, we'll have you on board.
Inshallah.
I'm sure you have a lot of stories to share, and that can really be invaluable. This is a theme that's coming out in most of my conversations over here. Successes and failures, you need people who can have a look at you, have a 10-minute conversation with you and tell you that, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, watch out for this, do this, do that. And so many things that obviously you haven't gone through before. Hiring people, scaling up, having systems in place, accounting, finance.
Of course.
You didn't need that, but generally entrepreneurs lack in that department. So for sure, it must matter and it should matter. And that's great feedback. I mean, that's,
they keep you in check. Honest truth is very much needed to keep you grounded, because people that have a vested interest will always have a bias in their views. That's why I say you need to have someone has a completely unvested interest in the success or failure of what you're doing. They're doing it just generally to ensure that you have sound advice. And that's very, very critical. You need to set boundaries for yourself, be honest with yourself, have along your journey key milestones to evaluate, just to manage your risk, right? Because entrepreneurship is all-encompassing. It can really suck you in. And if you don't have a process in place to measure your progress, you can look back and say, well, I've dug myself in too deep and it's real hard to get out, etc., and so forth. There's no harm in walking away. Majority of the first-time entrepreneurs are not successful, right? I wouldn't say necessarily I'm massively successful either. The business is still around, so that's a success in itself.
Yes.
But it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And it's one of the things this region, I think, culturally has to change, has to adopt, that we're not good at, if I'm being very frank, is embracing failure and celebrating failures. Because there's a lot of learnings in there. And it's important, right? For you to really enjoy success, you have to have tasted failure, right? And that's a big difference between this ecosystem and a more mature ecosystem like the US.
Yeah,
right?
Silicon Valley,
Right.
It's a badge on your chest.
It is a badge on your chest, and if you talk to the investors, they are more inclined to give capital if they had the option to give it to the first-time founder or to a repeat founder who has failed. 9 out of 10 times, they'll give money to the one that has failed because they know what mistakes not to make. They'll be smarter for it next time around, whereas the first-time founder will probably make a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
Obviously, if you're successful, then there's, people are begging to take your money, or take my money. So there's nothing wrong with failure, but you need to know when to walk away, etc. To make sure you have enough resources, firepower, motivation to do another journey. another path, another venture, etc., and so forth. But you need to have a very objective way of evaluating that as to when and how you make those decisions. I think having those sort of mentors who've been there, done it, can really help you navigate those critical decisions.
So, I mean, SmartCrowd was a great story in terms of achieving something new. You did face a lot of challenges. Real estate is not an easy industry. And definitely you had learnings from that. You recently handed over the reins as CEO to someone else. There's a new person in charge. How does that feel? What was that journey like? What are the learnings from it?
Yeah, it's we started SmartCrowd at a time where Dubai real estate market was sort of on a decline, a steady decline since 2014 onwards. A lot of people were quite skeptic of my decision, but I'm a numbers guy, so data told me otherwise.
I've seen that in one of your earlier talks. You did mention that you made a few acquisitions just because the market was down, and you knew. I mean, you can take credit in that. You knew that this cycle is probably a 6-year cycle, and you put it on the spot.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, and that again, right? That's not necessarily. I wouldn't say necessarily. I'm a genius or anything of that nature. It's just being analytical, looking at the data points, and not going with emotions, etc., and so forth. Because if you go back in time, 2017, 2018, the headlines were like, oh, supply demand imbalance, supply too much supply, too much supply, too much supply, and market crashing, etc., and so forth. But when you look in the data and so forth, it was telling a different story. I was very bullish in 2018, 2019, even during COVID, etc., and so forth. So I'm not as active on social as I was back then. But if you go back, and you're rightly so, right? It's out there in the public domain in terms of the calls I made, in terms of where the cycle was, etc., and so forth, and what my present views are as well too on the market and long term. We can talk about that as well too. But like I said, timing in entrepreneurship matters a lot. You can have the best product in the world, the best execution, but you can be unlucky and do it at the wrong time and not be successful, where someone else does it at the right time can be massively successful. And that's not to make excuses. I think we were a bit early. There are challenges generally, inherently speaking. We are a very retail-focused business. One of my most rude awakening of starting SmartCrowd was lack of financial literacy among adults.
Retail, yeah.
It was quite shocking. I took it for granted because I come from a finance background. A lot of this stuff is very sort of second nature to me. But I spoke to many professionals, right? Doctors, lawyers, engineers, smart people in their own right, but completely clueless when it comes to basic financial principles. So there's a lot of education that's required, right? So it's a slow burn. What I mean by that is the customer acquisition cost, timeline, etc., nurturing customers, converting them into paying customers, etc., takes a long time, right? And startup world is all about, hey, acquire customers, make money from them, recover your costs, make money, right?
Yes.
And if your unit economics don't work, it becomes quite challenging. Our unit economics are very strong, but the length of recovery of that cost is long because just inherently the asset class is a long-term investment and you make money along the way. So a lot of challenges from that perspective. So, and being an accountant, my whole philosophy of building the business was very fundamentally driven. It wasn't sort of grow at every cost. It's like, hey, build sound fundamental economics. So when you do scale, it's extremely profitable business, and that's still true to hold today, right? Our economics are very favorable, etc. It's just a matter of scale. But we went through a period where it was like grow at every cost, throw money at it, etc. Even if you're not making money, just grow. And those cycles change, obviously, right? So a lot of businesses that did that raised money, a lot of crazy valuations,
and we saw a lot
either
of that.
went away or valuation also has negative consequences because it cuts your optionality out, right? Because if you get too expensive, etc., M&A or consolidation becomes a lot of. I mean, you can have a whole different session on this. I don't want to get into too many details, but so alhamdulillah, we've done it in a very fundamental way, etc. But I've been down this journey for 6 years. The opportunity cost gets bigger and bigger. I started this sort of in the prime of my career. At a time where you sort of maximize your earnings, growing family, etc. So it got to a point where it was like, okay, the opportunities cost too high, right? At some point in time, this success or whatever it is will get monetized. I will benefit from it. But continuing on this path, the risk reward, being a finance guy again, just looking from a allocation perspective of my personal wealth. The risk reward didn't make sense anymore, etc. So having candid conversation with my board, with the investors, saying, listen, hey, we need to reevaluate my personal situation, etc. I need to be flexible enough to explore other options, etc., and so forth, to ensure I don't overcommit and over risk myself, etc. For God forbid, we never get to that level where we monetize this. It can personally set me negatively, etc. So the decision was made to allow me to sort of move on, and the business was at a stage where it was steady Eddie, and have a different person running it because it requires a different mindset, etc. Building a business, growing a business, maintaining a business, very different skill sets required. And you as an entrepreneur need to recognize that. You might be great at starting a business, but you may not be great at running a business or scaling a business, etc. Very different mindsets, different skill sets, etc., and so forth. So that conversation started back in 2023, and then early part of 2024, we made that transition where we had a management in place to take over the business. I sort of moved more in a strategic role at the board level. That allowed me to pursue other opportunities, etc. And because being what I have established with SmartCrowd, being a pioneer in the space, etc., and so forth, the opportunities are there were quite a few to pursue. So alhamdulillah, that gave me an opportunity to pursue other passions, other things, etc., and leverage my experience and my learnings to benefit others. And alhamdulillah, it's been a phenomenal decision, not only financially, but also, I would say more importantly, socially, and I would say from a health perspective as well too, right? It was a lot of stress taken away as well too, and so forth. And alhamdulillah, it's been, I think the only thing I would say is like maybe I should have taken that decision a year earlier. But alhamdulillah, everything happens for a good reason and its own time, and so that transition has been a very fruitful one. It wasn't easy, right? To give up your child.
Yeah, of course.
But as a parent, your kids grow up at some point in time, and they go on to their own journey. They create their own families and so forth. No different in here as well too. Is that it's okay, right? It's almost like I'm giving my daughter away in marriage. I'm giving SmartCrowd away to someone else to manage.
Yes, interesting analogy. But and I mean, I'm sure you realize. In this phase that, and it's difficult. I'm bringing a Pakistani perspective over here. As a Pakistani founder, you already mentioned one failure probably that you had was not having a mentor, not having that sounding board, that independent sounding board, as you said very rightly. What other mistakes or failures do you think were part of this whole pathway? Of course, it's not ended yet. But I'm sure your initial ambition was to take SmartCrowd yourself to a certain level. What were the mistakes or the failures that you'd like to bring forward for others at this stage in their journey?
Yeah, so I'll talk about some of the key elements you want to pay attention to as you're embarking on your journey. So you really need to set critical milestones in your journey, whether they're 6 months, 12 months, time-bound milestones, and have a clear plan in terms of what needs to be achieved by each cutoff period to self-evaluate, hey, are you on the right path? Is it a journey you want to continue or not? Have that clearly established. Don't go with complete intuition, guts, etc., and so forth. Because if you don't have that objectivity, you are prone to make some bad decisions.
I mean, we mentioned guts, and I think this is a problem with us, Pakistani.
No, but there's nothing wrong with having that gut feeling and doing it, but there has to be some level of objectivity on it to fall back into it, right? Otherwise, not all decisions based on emotions are the most effective decisions. You will probably make a lot of gutsy decisions that will pay out, but you need to have some level of objectivity for the sanity of yourself and for people around you.
I completely agree. I think guts are important, but if they're fact-checked or sounded out to a mentor, number one, and number two, backed by some data as well.
Yeah,
data is important.
So alhamdulillah, we're believing people, right? So at some level, it's your intention that matters a lot, right? There's barakah in that as well too.
Yes.
So having sound intentions make a big difference as to having that purpose, as to why you're doing what you're doing is very, very critical. So that just helps you sort of keep yourself in check over time, right? So that's one thing I would say is probably critical. And then when you're starting a business, etc., on the entrepreneurship journey, really have your end goal mapped out, right? Like, what are you trying to do, right? Are you building a lifestyle business? Are you building a scaling business that you want to grow and be the next Kareem or whatever the case may be? Are you building a business to be sold in 2, 3, 4 years, etc.? Because all these have different paths. How you build your business, how you build your team, how you build your product, how you build traction has different nuances in terms of what your destination is, what you're trying to do. And if you have that clarity up front, it can really make your life easy, right? And then you have really structured plan in terms of how you go about building your business. So have that clarity on day one. Like I said, fundraising is very critical. It's not easy. It's extremely difficult. And then raising money, who you're raising money from. That's also very, very important, right? Because it takes one bad investor to make your life living hell, right? So be very careful who you take money from. And also before that, you have to determine, hey, is this a business that needs third-party capital?
Right.
Can I bootstrap it, right? I highly encourage people to bootstrap as much as you can, right? Get to a certain level where if you desperately need money, then you get to it, but you get money at your own terms, right? So try to bootstrap. Not every business is a VC investable business, so be cognizant of that. It might be, a private equity type business, private office, or it might not be anything, right? You might be able to survive on some other sort of financing options and so forth. But you need to really understand, what you're trying to do and what your end goal is. That will really determine what you are, because whoever's giving you money has to make a return, etc. So you need to sort of map these things out, and there are tools that can help you in terms of determining that. You cannot do it on your own. It's good to have someone else, co-founder, 1, 2 maximum, and their level of commitment, complementary skill set, right? Healthy discourse is very important to keep yourself in check, and alignment of interest and risk taking. That's very critical, because a lot of failures you have in entrepreneurship, not only the key ones that are running out of money, but second is chemistry, wrong teams, etc., and so forth, right? If you're building a tech business, having a technical founder, I think, is important. I don't think it's a must. It's you'll fail if you don't have it, but it helps a lot.
Absolutely.
Right? Because as a finance guy, I was building a financially regulated business. I did almost everything myself, right? Besides building the tech. Actually, I remember I actually ended up building a lot of the tech, not coding, but from a product perspective and so forth. And that's one of the expertise that I have now, is building product, right? Sort of on-the-job training. And then knowing what your limitations are, when to bring in different people, etc. Getting a team from, like a business from 1 to 10 requires a different skill set, etc. 10 to 100 requires a different. So don't be afraid to let people go, because they're not the right to take you from 10 to 100. They're a grade from 1 to 10. Make sure they're taken care of, rewarded, etc., for the efforts that they put in. But those critical decisions, etc., along the way. And all these things I'm saying from experience, I didn't know this stuff, right? You can read a book and it can give you some ideas and so forth, but someone that has done a practical experience and so forth can see the nuances and so forth are very critical. So it's just some of the elements that I think are very critical in your journey. And there's many more that we can probably have another podcast on that and all the mistakes that I made, right? Which are plenty. And I'm not shy to talk about it, right? Because I think other people can benefit from it, and they should.
Thank you so much. I think that really adds value. I really appreciate how candid you've been and how willing you are to share. I think you'll be a great mentor for some of our startups.
Yeah.
Moving on to newer, better things.
Yeah.
You do seem excited about things that are happening right now, the freedom you have, the new ventures. So, what tickles you? What gets you excited now?
Yeah, lots of different things actually. To be honest, right? I think. What's amazing is having gone through this over the last 6 years. What things are important in life, reprioritizing things, such as your own personal health, sleep. It has profound implications on everything else you do, right? Since I decided to move on from SmartCrowd, I'm down 20 kgs.
Wow.
Right? I haven't felt this good physically, mentally in a long time. And that's because I made a distinct decision of prioritizing myself. And that has profound implications on your career, opportunities that come to you, et cetera, and so forth. So don't take that for granted, right? Because when you become an entrepreneur, you really sacrifice your mental health, your physical health, et cetera. Don't do that. It's not worth it. Not worth it. Right? Second, prioritizing family and family time. So those are things that really I find that gets me excited and motivated. If you look at my YouTube feed, a lot of them are focused on that because it's an algorithm just keep feeding me more and more information. I've gone down through a rabbit hole in terms of understanding, what kind of things you should eat and sleep. Lots of different things that are good for you, right?
Good for you.
Etc. I'm one of those like self-help kind of people. I'm not promoting that, but it's really important to take, understand the science behind it,
Yes.
and make that part of your normal routine and so forth. So that's very exciting these days, etc. And then building SmartCrowd, one of the true passions, even though I'm a finance guy, I'm a horrible accountant, to be honest. So I don't enjoy that at all. What I really enjoy is building products. That was one of the most exciting things I did at SmartCrowd was building the product from scratch, without any formal training and so forth. Was just on the job. One of the things we didn't talk about when I started my university, actually didn't start in accounting. I was in MIS. I did Java coding like back in the day, and I only have 1 A+, and that was in Java, and I dropped out. Right? In hindsight, probably that would have been. Anyways, I don't want to sort of talk about missed opportunities, but logical mind, etc. So
True.
My tech team was in Bangladesh. I used to be in Dhaka every three months.
Okay.
Sitting with the coders and doing it until recently. I was doing a lot of the debugging myself. Right? If there were any issues with the like I'll message the programmer like, yeah, go there. You probably find the issue over there. Like, how the hell do you know this? Like, well, I built this thing ground up with the engineers and so forth, understanding the database and so forth. So product side is very exciting.
Yes.
So a lot of the things that I'm doing now, helping other companies and so forth, is sort of commercializing their businesses from a regulatory perspective. It's also another expertise that I have. Being pioneer in terms of setting up a lot of the regulatory frameworks in the region. I was able to get licenses in Dubai, in Saudi, in Pakistan. We did a sandbox as well too in Bahrain. I did some stuff in UK and so forth.
Amazing.
So those are two areas that I'm very sort of involved in, helping people commercialize their licenses that they already have, and then building products. So that's the focus these days, and that's what excites me.
Fantastic. Well, I think it would be a missed opportunity if we've had you here and not talked about real estate in general. Our audience is Pakistan. Pakistan में हर एक को शौक है real estate खरीदने का. Dubai is a favorite market for Pakistanis as well. Everybody aspires to have something here. So give us some feedback. What is the state of Dubai real estate? Is it too high? Is it at its peak? Is there a crash coming? Okay. Is it going to get more expensive from here on? I'm a renter, so is it going to
Nothing
get
wrong
more
with renting.
expensive?
Nothing wrong with renting.
Ah, yes, you ascribe to that philosophy as well.
Yeah, no, I would never buy a home to live in. Right? That's just my view. Unless I'm buying my forever home that I'm going to grow old and die in.
Yeah.
That's a purely emotional decision, right? I look at real estate like any other investable asset class purely from an investment perspective. I hate to make predictions, etc., but my views are always long term. You know, I can't predict what will happen in the short term and so forth. And generally speaking, your investment philosophy should be very long term and not get too focused on the short term. And because that leads to sort of emotional panic decisions, etc., which are not favorable, especially for retail investors. So from a long term perspective, now is as good as any time to buy real estate, particularly in Dubai. And there's a lot of rationales for it, right? Which I've been sort of preaching since early part of the decade, and that view hasn't changed. There's been phenomenal structural reforms that have taken place over the last 10 years, which we're starting to see benefits of over the last 2-3 years. I think COVID really accelerated that. I remember if you go to one of my YouTube videos back in 2019. At that point in time, I had predicted a cycle uptick in sort of 2023, 2024, and that time got accelerated because of COVID. So, so structural reforms is one. We have phenomenal leadership, which I already talked about. Population growth is a critical factor. That what gets me very excited and bullish about Dubai real estate. And people still talk about supply, demand. I'm going on record, right? We don't have enough supply. If we believe in the demand story of Dubai, of population doubling over the next 10, 20, or whatever you call it,
Yeah, the
we
2040
don't
plan.
have enough supply. We just don't, right? So yes, things are going to get more expensive. Just a sad reality, right? We also have inflation, which makes all hard assets inflate as well too, right? So that's also another moving factor that's going to drive that. I hate to say it, but the world is messed up. All right, there's massive structural problems in the developed world, Europe, US, Canada, North America in general, all developed worlds, Western world, are going through a lot of structural problems.
And social problems.
And social problems, 100%, right? Yeah. So the more the world gets screwed, the more benefit for Dubai, in my humble opinion, right? There was a period that a lot of money from here went back to Pakistan. Right? This is sort of, I would say, around 2018, 2019, when Imran Khan was in power, etc. The Nia Pakistan born, the Russian account came, etc. and so forth. There's a lot of positive momentum. A lot of people start selling stuff over here and moving money back to Pakistan. But that money has come back and multiples of that back over here because of the challenges in Pakistan and so forth. But not only in Pakistan, plethora of other countries, right? India, etc. and so forth with the Indian rupee and so forth.
Russia, UK,
lots of different things, right? But what's different in this cycle is you're starting to see nationalities that had not invested in the past, which is Western Europe, North Americans, Far East. And they're not speculators. They're not investors. They're like, hey, I want to change my tax base to Dubai. I want to have a second home over here. I want the lifestyle over here. The amount of wealthy people from subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they all have their businesses there, but they live here. Their senior executive teams live over here. How many flights to Karachi from Dubai?
Yeah.
It's a shuttle service,
It's a shuttle
right?
service.
So like, hey, I live over here. I have safety. I have great education. I have great medical. I'll maintain my work over there, fly in, fly out.
Yes.
Whenever I need to, right? So that's becoming the norm. A lot of executive nomads, digital nomads are moving over here. The amount of people that have moved from North America over here because of social problems. I know a bunch of friends that have moved over here, no job. Like we got sick and tired of it. We moved the entire family over here. Inshallah, we'll find something, right? But we want this lifestyle, right? We want the safety, etc. and so forth. So that's going to continue, right? I don't see anything that's going to sort of put a stop to that. So if that's the case, you need more homes, right? And you can't build fast enough, right? Land is more expensive. Construction costs is more expensive. So all that is moving the floor. So things are going to get more expensive. Will it maintain the same momentum, the pace? Maybe not, and it shouldn't. Will there be some softness or correction along the way? I hope so.
Probably.
That's part of the healthy process. But if you look back 10 years, you're like, crap, I should have bought that at 2,000 dirhams per square foot because now it's 3,000 dirhams per square foot,
Yes.
etc. So, the advice I give people is like, listen, you can never time these things. What you can control is how much time you spend in the market. So make sure you do your homework, buy the right thing, and make sure you have holding power, right? And that goes for any investment. It doesn't have to be real estate. Whether you're buying stocks or whatever, you have holding power, you will make money. All these things over time eventually inflate, right? So if you hold it long enough, you will make money, right? So plan your investments properly, have the holding power, and not don't put yourself in situations where you get desperate. Like, a lot of people in COVID got desperate because they were over levered, they didn't have the holding power, and they end up crystallizing their losses, not to be recovered. So if you plan it properly, there's no reason why you couldn't make money and make money in this.
And what's the case over here for, let's say, crowdfunding versus buying direct? I think there's as a finance guy, I know your pieces, you appreciate it as well. That was probably one of the fundamentals of building that product. But yes, diversifying your risk into various real estate assets versus concentrating it in one.
Correct.
And taking that risk, a higher risk probably on that asset location, various factors at play.
100%, right? So let me start off with the overall looking at your investment portfolio, right? So obviously everyone has their own risk appetite, goals, et cetera, and so forth, right? So your overall allocation will determine based on your personal needs, right? And that will determine, hey, what sort of allocation I need to have in alternative assets like real estate, right? You shouldn't have a lot of your capital tied up in one single asset. That's just not very smart, right? Unless you're very young and you can afford to take that concentration risk to really grow your capital. But later on in stage, you need to have sort of diversify and preserve your capital, then try to grow your capital. So that will dictate whether you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of your assets in alternative assets or more high risky assets, et cetera, and so forth. So once you have that allocation, then you need to determine, okay, how much money that is, right? Obviously, if you have $10 million to invest and your allocation is 30, that's like 3 million dirhams, or right? If you have $1 million total pot, then obviously that's less, et cetera. And so that obviously gives you limitations on what you can do, right? So when it comes to real estate, you can buy it outright with cash. That's one option. You can get financing and buy. You can get off-plan and get in that way. Or you can do what SmartCrowd does, is fractional, right? So depending on how much kitty you have, these are your options. You have to determine what's the best thing for you from that perspective, right? You might have money to buy outright, right? But why put all that money into one asset? God forbid you bought in the wrong area. Sports City. I didn't say that out loud, did I? As opposed to JVC, for example, over the last few years, et cetera. That's not good, right? It's a lot of concentration risk. So instead of doing that, you can take that money and go to a platform like SmartCrowd and spread that across 5, 10 different properties.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a cost to it, et cetera, and so forth, but the risk reward is far superior, right? You can get financing and buy a property that allows you to buy the same money 2 or 3 properties, but then you are taking on additional risk. It's not just the real estate risk you're taking, now you're taking interest rates risk, right? Yeah, obviously the mortgage rates are low today, but if the interest rates go up, you put yourself in, your tenant leaves, et cetera, you can't make payments, the market is not in favor, you end up selling at a worst possible time.
Or you have bad tenant who doesn't pay.
Bad tenant, et cetera, and so forth. So you're taking on more risk. And then also you have to look from a social, ethical perspective, whether that's the right thing to do. Obviously it's not. Even if you look at Sharia, finance, et cetera, I'll leave that for a different topic. I'm not an expert in that, but some people have question marks around that and so forth. The other one is off-plan. Off-plan can be very lucrative, right? You can make a lot of money, but you can also get caught up in some very poor decisions. So this is where you really need to do your homework, consult with the right people, et cetera. When I say consult with the right people, please don't consult brokers because they're commissioned, so there's a bias there. Talk to people that are going to give you genuine advice. And let me recorrect that, right? Not all brokers are commission hungry, et cetera. Some people actually genuinely care about their clients and so forth. So just make sure you do your homework and you're speaking with the right people that can guide you in that. Off-plan can be very lucrative, and it has been for many. but a lot of people have lost a lot of money, right? So a lot of the bad rep people get in Dubai is because of people
Who lost all
a lot of money buying the wrong things, etc., and so forth. If you buy the right location with the right developer, with the right payment plan, etc., and so forth, it gives you inherent leverage without the leverage element to it, etc., making it very halal from that perspective. So these are the options to consider, and then obviously, SmartCrowd gives you the ability to really have that allocation, have diversity within it. Hey, I'm buying something in prime real estate. I'm buying something affordable area. I'm buying long-term strategy, rental strategy versus holiday home, short-term, etc. So it gives you the ability to really, because Dubai is very interesting because you might have a cycle that's going up, but different segments perform differently, right? They don't. It's like if Dubai is up 30%, doesn't mean your real estate is up 30% as well too, right? Which is always the case when you go talk to sellers. Like, oh, market is up, but yeah, but you have a different kind of asset, etc. You're not up 30%, you're up 10%. Stop asking for money that's 30%, etc. So performance does vary, etc. There's nuances, different kinds of segments. Dubai is, I tell people, right? Dubai is phenomenal. It caters to people that make 15,000 dirhams a month, and it caters to people that make 10 times that.
Yes.
Right? And they're equally satisfied, or equally miserable.
It is.
Right? So you have to be able to take advantage of different segments and so forth. And depending on the cycle, business cycles, it can have implications different between prime area versus affordable areas, etc., and so forth. So having that ability to diversify without having a lot of capital was the reason SmartCrowd was founded, to level the playing field.
Yeah. Okay, moving on towards the conclusion of our chat today. And it's been great. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of interesting viewpoints, a lot of feedback. At the end, I think I'd like you to share some key learnings, key pointers that a new founder who's developing a new space or a new product should keep in mind, and a Pakistani founder, let's say.
Yeah, so I'll give a very general advice, right? Because there's a lot of nuances in their product, etc., very specific to depending what kind of business they're building. But generally, if you are considering entrepreneurship as a first-time venture and so forth, I have 4 P's of entrepreneurship that I preach, right? And I think there are probably many, but these 4 to me are very, very critical, right? The first one is purpose. You really need to define clearly why you're doing what you're doing. And it's not like, one day you wake up and some miracle thing happens and you get a purpose. It comes with experience, and it could change over time, etc. And write it down on a piece of paper. And it cannot be about making money, right? That's the worst possible purpose. And that's the first thing I did, right? So if you go on my LinkedIn, there's an article there from 2017, even before the company was incorporated, titled Our Purpose. And I rewrote it again in COVID, because COVID was a very interesting, challenging time. And I doubled down on it. And it's there in black and white. And it keeps you honest to go back. And money is a horrible thing, because anything material is a moving target. You get to it, you want more. You're never satisfied. So by having a purpose, it really indicates what your success factors are, right? And it'll help you be a lot more content. It will also tell you when it's time to move on, because it no longer fits that purpose, et cetera, and so forth, right? And that is important, because that's what's going to drive your second P, which is passion, right? Because entrepreneurship is hard. And if you're not passionate about it, you're going to give up, right? So purpose drives the passion, and that passion is going to lead to your third P, which is persistence, perseverance, right? It's a roller coaster, and the amount of times you are against a wall, it's countless, right? You get knocked down a lot. You need to pick yourself up, and you got to keep at it. You can't take no for an answer, right? And that persistence will help you persevere, right? And without the purpose and the passion, it won't. You'll just give up and you move on, because a paycheck is a lot easier than entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right? And the last and the most important, sabr, patience. Because things don't happen in the time that you want. Entrepreneurship, you're moving 100 miles an hour, but the world isn't. things don't happen at the pace that you want. Building product, building tech is not easy. It's challenging. It takes time. Be patient. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with people around you, etc. And I think if you've mastered those 4 Ps, you have a pretty good recipe for success in entrepreneurship, at least from my point of view.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Siddiq, for your valuable feedback. For the 4 Ps, I'm gonna hold on to those. I'm gonna write a purpose very soon.
Yeah, good. Just give me their hashtags at the whatever. Some credit to it. I'll once you write a book on it, if I have time, inshallah.
Great. Thank you so much.